Long ago, before there was humanity, there were two beings of unparalleled power. One with complete dominion over the physical, bathed in the power of light, and another with complete dominion over the intangible, cloaked in the power of dark. These beings were known as the gardener and the winnower. Together, they balanced each other perfectly. If the gardener overflourished, then the winnower would cut back. If the winnower cut too much, the gardener would return what was lost. This balance was maintained for eons, until the balance was upset. We still do not know what caused the light and dark to fall out, but their power would be felt across galaxies, and these powers would find their way to humanity. This would come to us in the form of a machine turned God, a traveler of the cosmos. This would land on our doorstep on the not-so-distant planet of Mars. Humanity would send emissaries, an American astronaut, a Chinese taikonaut, and a Russian cosmonaut. Once encountered on Mars, they learned of the capabilities of this traveler. It was able to terraform planets to affect the physical world with the power of light. And for the first time ever, it rained on Mars, and humanity would change forever. We were propelled into a golden age. Impossible technologies were suddenly possible. Human lifespans tripled, and we were able to travel the universe to discover more. Life was flourishing until the darkness arrived. This attack would propel us into what is known as the collapse. All progress was lost, and the Dark Age began. But with the end of an era, a new one begins. With its final breath before lying completely dormant, the traveler would create one final gift: the ghosts. Small drones, each containing a sliver of the traveler's power. These ghosts would seek out long-dead warriors to resurrect with the traveler's light. With this, the first light bearers would come to be. And over the centuries, they would go from light bearers to warlords, from warlords to iron lords, and from iron lords to guardians. And that's where we find ourselves at the beginning of our story. A guardian rising. Our journey begins in old Russia, within the gutted corpse of an industrial complex known as the Cosmodrome. We awake, having just been resurrected in the light by our ghost. As the centuries of atrophy begin to fade away, we are told to head into the Cosmodrome in search of an Arcadia-class jump ship that would transport us back to the last city. We fight through waves of a race of arachnid-like aliens known as the Fallen, formerly the Elixni. These particular Fallen were scavengers of the House of Devils. Once the ship was retrieved, we headed to the last city. Through storms and valleys, mountains and forests, we arrive at the tower, the central hub of the city and home for all guardians. And with our arrival, we learn what it is to be a guardian by a man known as the Speaker. To fight the darkness, to service the light, to protect those that can't protect themselves. Throughout the solar system, guardians protect all that is sacred. But for us to be able to fulfill that calling, we would need to return to the Cosmodrome and slay the fallen Archon Rising known as Rixus. Rixus had in his possession a near light-speed drive, a component for the ship needed for interplanetary travel. Once gathered, we then explored what was left of the Cosmodrome, discovering that the Fallen were trying to break past the firewalls of a fragment of the war-mined Rasputin. During this discovery, we encountered the mystical and darkness-fueled hive within a nesting ground they created in the Skywatch. The hive on Earth was an unusual sight considering they were thought to make the moon their territory. During this time, we activated an old communications array, which was then promptly taken over by Rasputin in order to regain control over its network of warsats and bunkers throughout the system. With this done, we finally take the fight to the fallen House of Devils, slaying their high servitor known as Sepix Prime and dealing massive damage to the fallen house in the process. Due to our accomplishments, the interdiction of the moon was lifted, so that we could follow up on the discovery of the hive on Earth. It is here that we discover a temple created by the hive known as the Temple of Crota. After defeating its hive protectors, we recover a dead ghost, and within its empty shell, we obtain the knowledge of a hive invasion of Earth. Investigating this lead would lead us to the hive stronghold known as the Hellmouth, in search of an information database known as the World's Grave. Within the World's Grave, we learned that the hive's plan for invasion was nearing its completion. This would lead us back into the Temple of Crota in order to defeat the Swarm Princes, physical manifestations of Crota's power. Once defeated, we ventured deeper into the temple, destroying a shrine built in deference to Oryx, a hive god and father of Crota. During this time, we would also receive an emergency transmission from the speaker, informing us that a hive ritual to drain the traveler of its light was now in play. We would also receive another mysterious transmission from a person we've never met. Her only words, "There are worse enemies than the hive. If you wish to learn more, find me in the Ishtar Sink on Venus." Having ventured back into the Temple of Crota, we discover this ritual, learning that the hive planned on draining the traveler through the corruption of one of its many fallen shards. Once disrupted, we made a path to Venus, intrigued by the statement that there were worse enemies than this in the system. It is within the Ishtar Sink that we encounter the Vex, a race of robot frames controlled by organic fluid that have the power to control the flow of time. After killing several of them, the mysterious person shows herself. It would be some time before we know our identity, but for now, we know her as the Exo Stranger. She tells us of the threat the Vex pose, and for us to truly avert a second collapse and stop the Vex, we needed to enter the Black Garden, the birthplace of the Vex race, and destroy the Black Heart at its center. Only then will the traveler begin to heal. In order to reach the Black Garden, however, we would need to enlist the help of the Awoken, a race of people born from the clash of light and dark and the collapse. They were the only ones who knew of the Black Garden's location. And so, we ventured to the Reef, a string of asteroids and crashed ships, now under the dominion of the Queen of the Awoken, Mara Sov. Despite being very adversarial at first, especially the Awoken Prince and brother to Mara, Aldrin, they made an agreement. They would help us enter the Black Garden, but to do that, we would need a key to be made. The only way to forge this key would to bring them the head of a Vex Gate Lord. With this information, we set our eyes back to Venus and track it down. But before doing so, we needed to learn more about the Vex and how they operate. In doing so, we kill a Vex Cyclops and take its mind core for study in an abandoned Ishtar Collective outpost. It is here that we learn of the Vex's capabilities, such as time travel and the ability to relay information through multiple timelines at the same time. After our discovery, we worked to secure Venus against the fallen House of Winter, who were combing this planet for valuable Golden Age tech to use for their own purposes. Having done this, we were led to an old laboratory that was being assaulted by this house. We enter and fight the fallen off so that any valuable secrets and information would not fall into their hands. While defending, we hear of the Vault of Glass for the first time. Admitting defeat, the fallen House of Winter retreated, but as they left, we traced them back to their Ketch and slayed their Kel. With this threat dealt with, we finally encounter the Vex Gate Lord Zydron and defeat him, taking his head back to the Awoken so they can make the key. Much to his distaste, Aldrin Sov would honor our agreement and cut out the eye of the Vex Gate Lord, in turn giving us the key. But for it to function, we would need to charge it. With this, the Queen would tell us that the entrance to the Black Garden would lie on Mars, and that for this information, we were hereby indebted to her for at least one favor. With this, we headed to the Meridian Bay on Mars. Here we discovered the gate leading to the Black Garden, but unfortunately for us, we could not enter. We decided to investigate Mars in order to find a solution to our charging problem. It is during this time that we encounter the Cabal, a race of militaristic and savage aliens with a penchant for conquering and destroying whole systems. We track them to the Dust Palace, an old building where the Cabal were attempting to acquire a Warmind system for themselves. Having fought them off, we find out that this subsystem was actually already occupied by the fragment of Rasputin back on Earth. This would lead us to finding a way to charge the Gate Lord's eye through a Vex Spire, the only problem being that it was heavily in Cabal territory. And so, we journey to the Spire, killing the leader of the Blind Legion and charging the eye. We finally had our key to the Black Garden. As we mount our assault, we are bombarded by Vex forces, and as we make our way inside, we see a much more ancient-looking Vex, covered in the detritus of the garden itself. Throughout the Black Garden, we finally arrive at the Black Heart, a darkness-infected massive energy and core to the Black Garden. With its presence, we could see the power it held over the Vex and the Traveler. The Vex took to worshipping it due to having no knowledge or understanding of paracausality. With its destruction, the traveler would be free to heal, to gain strength, even possibly reawaken. We fight through countless Vex as the Black Heart uses its dark power to infect the minds of its worshippers, even calling upon its protectors, the Soul Progeny. In doing so, it bound its presence into those powerful Vex frames, so when we defeated each member of the Soul Progeny, we ended up damaging the Black Heart itself. Once all were defeated, the Black Heart withered away and died. In its death, light began to return to the system, and we would be called home. As celebratory processions ran out in the distance, we would be visited once again by the Exo-Stranger, giving us her rifle as a token of gratitude. She would inform us that work was not finished, and that there were plenty more enemies out there to discover. With our victory, there was still one more task to complete. It is then that we assemble a fire team of 6 to assault the Vault of Glass, a Vex structure where the past, present, and future all meet at a nexus. With this fire team, we would forcibly enter and discover the Aegis, a powerful artifact forged from the combination of light and Vex tech, left to us by Kabir, one of the Guardians who attempted to attack the vault and failed. We would use this to destroy the Templar and its oracles, who are capable of wiping us from existence in every timeline. We would then traverse the Gorgon's labyrinth, and eventually make our way to the inner sanctum, where our true enemy would lie, Atheon, Time's Conflux. This was the true power of the Vault of Glass, and with our light, firepower, and sheer will, we defeated Atheon and stopped the threat of the Vex and the Vault of Glass. For a fledgling Guardian like ourselves, this was a big accomplishment in so little time. Little would we know that they were far from over. With our victory and finally our rest, a new threat would emerge, and with it, an old friend of the Vanguard, thought to be lost to the darkness. After disrupting their ritual and plans for invasion, the Hive would conspire once more to invade Earth. Only this time, they would be led by the God Knight and Prince of the Hive, Crota. Their plan is to summon Crota from his throne world in the Ascendant Realm to the physical plane via the Chamber of Night on the Moon. With him there, they would finally be able to conquer Earth, for Crota had dealt with Guardians before. He had slain countless numbers of them when they tried to claim the Moon for their own. His power was the reason no Guardian could set foot on Luna, that is, until we came along. Unbeknownst to Crota, however, a Guardian survived his slaughter, and her name was Eris Morn. After our victory in the Black Garden, Eris would find her way out of the Hellmouth after years of being lost. She was irrevocably changed from what she had experienced. Her ghost was gone, her fire team killed, her body corrupted by Hive magics. But everything she had gone through would be the fuel for her to rise and find her way back to the city. It is here that we meet her, and she tells us of the machinations of the Hive on Earth. For us to truly combat them and stop Crota's summoning, we would need to take out his lieutenants. They serve as his conduits of power, and without them, we would hinder his arrival. First on our list was Sardon, the Fist of Crota. We track him throughout the Cosmodrome, killing countless Hive forces until we find him in the grottos. It is here where we fight and slay him as he'd slayed Guardians under Crota's command. With the Fist broken, we set our sights onto the fragment of Rasputin. He sends out a distress beacon as the Hive, led by Omnigul, the will of Crota, and mother to his children, attempted to infiltrate his bunker and weaken his defenses in order to mount their invasion unimpeded. We head to the Forgotten Shore in the Cosmodrome to search for a secret entrance to the Warmind that Eris had informed us about. We eventually make our way to the inner sanctum of the bunker, known as the Seraphim Vault. Here we attempt to battle Omnigul, but she escapes us. Not without leaving a present for us, however, a massively powered Hive Ogre called the Might of Crota. After felling this ogre, we were informed that the Hive had prepared the waking ritual within the depths of the Temple of Crota. It was time to take the fight back to the Moon. As we enter the temple, swarms of Hive forces along with tomb ships ambush us. We fight them off and enter the temple with Eris in our ear, guiding us through the cavernous labyrinth that was the inner workings. As we venture deeper and deeper, more Hive appear to slow our progress, each more fearsome than the last. Finally, we make our way to the Chamber of Night, where the waking ritual has begun. A giant crystal lay suspended in the air surrounded by the Wakers of Crota, deep in concentration. It was time to end this. One by one, we slayed the Wakers of Crota as they summoned thrall after thrall and knight after knight to stop us. Once defeated, the crystal would start to spin, sending green energy blasts at us as more hive were summoned to the fight. The crystal held the visage of Crota within it. We are told by Eris Morn to damage this crystal. This would send Crota back to his throne world and stop him from coming to our plane of existence. And so, after a hard fight and with great effort, we destroy the crystal, sending Crota's soul back screaming through the ether of the world and back to his pocket of reality. Eris congratulates us on a job well done, but the fight wasn't over. There's still the rest of Crota's lieutenants roaming around the Cosmodrome along with Omnigul. Quickly we hunt down Crota's forces, including the heart, the hand, and the eyes. Once slain, we finally set our sights on Omnigul, who attempted to raise an army of hive regardless. We track her to the Skywatch within the Cosmodrome and fell her as well. With Crota's forces demolished, any hope of invasion was squashed, but the job still wasn't done. Eris instructed us to gather a fire team. We were heading to the Hellmouth to enter Crota's throne world and kill him once and for all. For if an Ascendant hive is destroyed in its own domain, it will never come back. With this fire team, we build the bridge and descend into the Hellmouth. As we traverse the abyss, the weight of the darkness slows us to a crawl. We would then be ambushed by all manner of hive, but we would prevail, finally reaching the entrance to Crota's throne world and gaining ingress. It would be here that we would learn of the Sword of Crota, the only way to defeat him in his domain. As we build the bridge to his palace, we sunder hundreds of hive forces. Once within the palace, we encounter the death singer Iriyut, who can erase our existence with just a song. After a hard-fought battle, we kill her as well. It was now time for Crota himself. He makes himself known, attacking us while summoning countless hive to impede us. It is then that we discover a hive known as a sword bearer. We kill it and take its sword. Together we bring Crota to his knees, slashing away at the emerald chitin that encases his body. With each strike he attempts to summon his Oversoul, his ultimate weapon within his throne world, but to no avail. And as we slay him, his cries would echo out into the unknown, and someone would respond in time. Eris would commemorate us with a job well done. Crota was destroyed, his forces decimated, his invasion thwarted. With these few months, we would rest until the next threat would need to be dealt with. In our time of rest, Marasov would call upon us for that debt. The House of Wolves, a tribe of fallen that was once loyal to her, had rebelled against the reef and slayed countless awoken corsairs once their Kel, Skolas, had returned. Her favor was to hunt down Skolas and the fallen he took with him and slay them. She would then open the reef to all guardians of the last city, where their riches used as incentive. Within the reef, we worked with Petrovenge, the Queen's Wrath. She would tell us to travel to Venus, as Skolas was attempting to co-opt the House of Winter into his army. We fight through countless fallen forces, both from the House of Winter and the Wolves. We finally catch up to Skolas, who escapes, having taken control of the House of Winter. He would speak to us in Elixni, in which Varix, member of the House of Judgment and ally to the Queen, would translate. He tells us that Skolas fancies himself the Kel of Kells, an old Elixni legend, hence why he seeks to unite the other fallen houses under his banner. We would not let that happen. We would track them to the Cosmodrome, where Skolas enlisted the Silent Fang, a group of fallen assassins to destroy the House of Devils on Earth, since they did not want to join his reign. As we follow them through the breach, dodging every manner of trap left for us, we would reach the wall, where we first were risen as a guardian. The Silent Fang would engage with us, along with several fallen. After fighting wave after wave of enemies, the Silent Fang was no more. We had stopped them before they could claim the House of Devils, but there was still another fallen house on Earth, the House of Kings. The House of Kings was well hidden in the Cosmodrome. It would take some coordination to track them down and flush them out. Unfortunately for us, Skola suspected we would go for them, so he set up high servitors to jam our communications. We would find these high servitors and destroy them, gaining our comms back, and finally being able to track them down. We would make our way, noticing that the Hive left on Earth were still battling the Fallen. We would also finally reach our destination, a secluded area dubbed King's Watch by the Fallen there. We would encounter 2 King Barons and 1 Wolf Baron, but no Skolas. We would slay them before heading back to the reef for intel. The House of Kings would not be conquered by Skolas today. Skolas would become desperate, and he had a major idea he was cooking up. It would be a massive gamble, but if it worked, he would be unstoppable. We are told by Petra of Skolas' plan. He mobilized all of his forces on Venus to surround Vex strongholds across the entirety of the Ishtar Sink. We would travel to Venus only to discover that Skolas was using this mobilization as a distraction for the Vex in order to gain his true prize, Vex tech from the now defunct Vault of Glass. We quickly follow him into the vault, fighting off fallen forces and the oracles of the vault. Once beaten, Skolas has made off with the Vex technology, learning everything he can from data the oracles left behind. We eventually learn that Skolas plans on assaulting the Vex Citadel. We follow only for the Queen to tell us that there has been a change of plans. She now wants Skolas captured alive. We agree and continue to the top of the Citadel, where we encounter Skolas. Skolas, with his newly acquired Vex tech, would pull House of Wolves members through time to stop us. After a long standoff, we would defeat Skolas and his House of Wolves, capturing them alive, while Prince Uldren's crows would restrain him and transmat him aboard their ship. The House of Wolves was finally stopped as the Queen congratulated us. She would then imprison Skolas within the Prison of Elders, a gladiatorial prison where the prisoners would fight for their lives rather than be executed. We would enter the Prison of Elders and fight against Skolas, finally killing him. With the House of Wolves broken, the Queen shared her gratitude and let us know if we would be called again. But in time, a powerful enemy would emerge. His name was Oryx, the Taken King, and he would be seeking revenge for his son's killers. Us. The arrival of Oryx was not a quiet one. Within the rings of Saturn, a massive battle was occurring. The Awoken, led by Marasov, were taking the fight to the Taken King directly. Hive ship after hive ship was sundered by Uldren and his fleet, and when the battlefield laid vacant, scattered with debris, the Dreadnought, Oryx's flagship, was the only enemy left standing. Mara would use her ultimate weapon against the Dreadnought, her Harbingers. As she gathered every bit of her strength along with the Techians Kali, Shirochi, and Sadia to conjure them forth, the Dreadnought lied in wait, and when the Harbingers made contact with the outer hull, there was barely a scratch. Oryx, using his power, would activate the Dreadnought's weapon, and the Awoken fleet was decimated in a matter of seconds. Mara looked at the wave of energy barreling their way with acceptance, and as her ship was destroyed, she knew her role was done. It was now up to us to finish the fight. We would encounter Oryx on a routine mission to Phobos, one of Mars' moons. We were investigating a Cabal distress signal from the military base stationed there. Zavala and Eris would be over comms, watching our every move. As we traveled deeper within the base, holes of darkness would litter the corridors. Eris recognized this and grew terrified. She knew Oryx was here. We would enter the central annex of the base. It is here where we would see Oryx's power firsthand. Oryx had the ability to blight one's very existence away until nothing was left but pure darkness and an undying loyalty to him. These Taken proved too powerful, and at the order of Zavala and Eris, we would flee the Cabal base and return to the city. The Vanguard would convene in order to think up of a plan to board the Dreadnought and take out Oryx. This would lead Cade 6, the Hunter Vanguard, to come up with a plan. He would enlist us to travel to the Cosmodrome and infiltrate an abandoned colony ship. He had a stash of technology, one of them being a stealth drive. As we enter the Cosmodrome, we see that the Taken have already permeated the walls and were now infesting the area. Once we board the colony ship, we encounter an echo of Oryx. Once the echo was dissipated, we searched for the stealth drive, with it being nowhere in sight. Cade would reveal its location, showing that he had camouflaged it in case any would-be looters would happen upon his stash. Back at the tower, Cade would enlist Amanda Holiday, the shipwright for the Last City, to install the stealth drive onto Eris' ship, which was infused with the Hive's scent. We use Eris' ship to infiltrate the Dreadnought, destroying the ship in the process. It is here where we would establish a beachhead. We would travel through the Dreadnought's labyrinthine corridors and disable its weapon, allowing any allied ship to come near it. Once we made it to the hull to create a transmat zone, we would see that the Cabal had already entered the Dreadnought by ramming their flagship into its outer hull. Cabal fought with Taken and Hive with vengeance in their hearts. With the transmat zone now functioning, it was time to track Oryx down within his own ship. In order to gain information, we entered the crashed Cabal ship and searched through their database. We gleaned Oryx's location, which is beyond a portal within the Dreadnought itself. As we journeyed to this portal, we fought countless Cabal, Hive, and Taken. We then realized we are barred from entering the gateway. Eris surmises that we must be Ascendant to enter the rupture. Eris would hatch a scheme in order to make us Ascendant and enter the gateway. She would send us to the moon, back to where we disrupted the ritual that would bring Crota to our world. She believed a piece of the soul crystal we destroyed could still contain Crota's essence. Once in the Chamber of Night, we would find the crystal, but unfortunately for us, Crota's essence did not reside within it. It is then that we are stormed by legions of Taken and are forced to flee back to the surface. Once there, Cade and Eris would confer and begin to make a plan for how we could obtain this essence. Eris learns that the Hive are planning a funeral rite for Crota's soul. It is there where we could attain the needed essence, but in order to do so, we would need to enter his throne world once more, and doing that unseen would be challenging. Cade tells us to head to Earth to obtain stealth codes from Rasputin's bunker. With these, we would be able to infiltrate the funeral and absorb Crota's soul with the shard of crystal we had obtained. We successfully acquire the stealth codes and enter the throne world, absorbing Crota's soul and gaining the essence we needed to pass as Ascendant. Eris would then teleport us out of the action with Hive magic. We now had everything we needed to take down Oryx. We once again storm the Dreadnought and fight through countless Taken forces in order to reach the rupture. With Crota's soul absorbed, we pass through the rupture with no issues, leading us to the center of Oryx's ship. It is here, at the altar of Oryx, that we engage him in direct combat. And though he had centuries of prowess and skill, he was no match for our light. In a last-ditch effort, Oryx would summon any power he had left and would take himself, allowing him to retreat into his own throne world. With Oryx gone, Eris entered the Dreadnought, finding his sword, Willbreaker, shattered. She would procure a shard in hopes to forge a new weapon in our hands. With this shard, we would create powerful swords to be used against our enemies, but doing so would prove difficult. We would have to kill the Sword of Oryx, Ekthar, in true combat. We would accomplish this and forge our blades. With this, it was now time to root out the Taken in our system. Across the system, the Taken had infested our worlds for their own machinations. With each shade and echo of Oryx destroyed, we would loosen his grip on Soul. With the Taken deposed, we would go after his court next, and with each member's death, Oryx's power weakened more and more until finally it was time to end him. Once again, we gather a fire team, venture deep into the Dreadnought, and gain entrance to his throne world. We would slaughter the upper echelons of Oryx's army, starting at the War Priest. After that defeat, we would encounter the Ogre Golgoroth, and once he was dealt with, it would be Oryx's daughters, Ir-Anuk and Ir-Halak. With their deaths, Oryx arose, a gigantic version of what we had fought. He would use all manner of his power to defeat us, but in the end, it was not enough. We slew Oryx, his body calcifying and floating towards the depths of Saturn. Oryx, the Taken King, the murderer of trillions of life forms and planets, was dead. But the fight was far from over, as we would further explore the Dreadnought, killing any would-be takers of the throne, such as Malak and Alakul. In our exploration, we would discover Oryx's calcified fragments, within them containing the history of the Hive race, the Books of Sorrow. Eris would comb each and every word, with the Worm Gods, the high philosophy known as the Sword Logic, and the names Savathun and Xivu Arath pertaining the most interest. Eris would soon discover a blueprint hidden within its pages, a schematic of a weapon made from the pieces of the now slain Taken King. We would fashion this weapon and use it in our pursuits against the Hive and Taken. Our final mission aboard the Dreadnought would lead us to follow yet another distress signal from the Cabal, specifically the Skyburners, who had crashed into the Dreadnought to attack the Taken. We would discover these, noting that they were being sent to the head of the Cabal Empire, with any information they had gleaned from the Dreadnought itself. It would be some time before this enemy would make themselves known, but for now, it was on to the next crisis that would come shortly after. It was a relatively peaceful time since Oryx was slain. The Taken had been uprooted, the planet saved from his grasp. But soon something began to happen. Within the tower, a pandemic of sorts was beginning. A cluster of nanites appeared in the last city, infecting guardians and spreading from person to person. The Vanguard and Owl Sector would deal with this very quickly, but little did we know what this would mean. We would learn that the nanites came from Clovis Bray, a company known for groundbreaking Golden Age technology named after its founder. Unbeknownst to us, the fallen House of Devils would find a Clovis Bray lab and discover the nanotechnology known as Siva. With this, the House of Devils would lay claim to a forgotten piece of the Cosmodrome. Now known as the Plague Lands, the Fallen would create their base. With the Plague Lands infiltrated, Lord Saladin, a former Iron Lord and vendor to the Iron Banner, would be back in action. He enlisted us to take back Fellwinter Peak, the former base of the Iron Lords, from the House of Devils. As we climbed the mountain, we would discover the rebuilt Sepix Prime, now known as Sepix Perfected. He was covered and empowered by Siva, much to our surprise and Saladin's dismay. But we would once again defeat Sepix and claim Fellwinter Peak as our own. Unfortunately, Sepix survived and would escape. With Fellwinter Peak and the Iron Temple now within our purview, we would start to track down Sepix with the help of the hunter, Shiro 4. As we track Sepix deeper into the Plague Lands, it becomes more and more apparent that Siva has infected the land. Seeing this, Saladin orders us to abort our mission, as there were bigger problems to deal with than Sepix. We return to the Iron Temple, where Saladin regales us with what happened to the Iron Lords. Long ago, the Iron Lords heard rumblings of a nanotechnology that could build anything. They sought to use it to build a shelter for those unfortunate enough to live without it. As they traveled within the Siva complex, the Iron Lords would be killed off with it by the directive of Rasputin, the Warmind. Saladin was the only survivor. Knowing this, we take the fight to the Devil Splicers and make sure that Siva will not be used to win. We would hear that the House of Devils were using Siva to upgrade gun emplacements in order to aim them towards the last city. We would destroy these turrets and thwart their efforts. Next was to take down Sepix Perfected. He proved difficult, but we defeated him all the same. With the Plague Lands mostly secured, we were then tasked by Tyra Karn, a Cryptarch, to head to the Clovis Bray facility on Mars to discover the origin of Siva and find a possible weakness. With this accomplishment, we would finally take the fight to the Siva replication chamber. We tear a path through the Plague Lands, eventually discovering the location of the Siva complex. It is within the replication chamber that Siva would defend itself, using the reanimated corpses of the Iron Lords Gelion, Yolder, and Fellwinter. We would defeat these mockeries of heroes, and set charges that would detonate the Siva complex. With Siva destroyed, Saladin would invite us back to the Iron Temple and crown us the first in a new generation of Iron Lords. The fight wasn't done, however, as there were still fallen splicers with Siva on their bodies. Our first target was Kovik, the High Priest of the Devil Splicers. With his death, any experiments involving Siva were now gone. Next, we would take out the Devil Splicer leaders. For this, we would assemble a fire team and storm their base in the Cosmodrome. The first to fall was Vosik, the Archpriest. With his death, we continued to the top of the Cosmodrome wall, learning that the Fallen there have built a mechanical giant known as the Siege Engine. We destroy it and continue forward until we reach the Inner Sanctum where the Archon Prime, Axis, resided. We would discover Axis, now made fully mechanical due to Siva. And so we battle, using every ounce of might we have, and with that, Axis was slain, and the Siva crisis was over. We reveled in our victory. The system was finally at peace once more. In these last 3 years, we had accomplished so much as a Guardian, much more than some even anticipated. But as our age of light and triumph continued, an enemy would make themselves known by attacking everything we hold dear.